Ready?
Welcome back, everyone, to my podcast, Red Flags, Green Flags, Modern Psychology for Everyday Drama. In this third episode of Dating and Relationships, I want to talk about the topic of being attracted to partners older or younger than yourself. There are so many reasons why we feel more attracted to someone outside of our age category. Many people quickly think that they have mommy or daddy issues if they find someone older more attractive. However, this is not always the case. And there are many reasons why you can find someone much older than yourself more attractive. Same goes for people who are older and date much younger. And then again, what is socially acceptable and how to deal with the stigma if it exists. I also want to address the differences between genders and how dating older or younger is perceived differently and sometimes even criticized for both genders, and provide some interesting facts about these gender differences and explain how they can be leveraged in a positive way to make life more pleasurable. I will also be sharing some of the stories and experiences my followers have with dating older or younger, and also answer questions around today's super interesting topic. There are many misconceptions about dating out of our own age category, and in today's podcast, I wanted to dive into the different reasons, especially the psychological reasons, why people prefer someone with more mileage on their life meter. So let's just get started with understanding what attraction is before we talk about age differences and why we find that so attractive. But what is attraction? Let's start with that definition first. Look, you probably know the proverbial saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I personally believe that so much, right? What you find beautiful really depends on what you believe is beautiful. Who you find attractive depends on so many different factors. You find someone attractive based on how they look, their personality, maybe their height or even their build, and or maybe even their age. We find these characteristics attractive because they signal something to us. And interestingly enough, we try to change these features where possible to make ourselves even look more attractive. Now, one of the most intriguing factors of attraction is age. There are many associations we have with age, and our attraction to older or younger men or women can also even change with time. Beauty is often associated with youthfulness, indicating that your younger years of adulthood are your most beautiful years in terms of attractiveness. When you are young, you're full of life, you're energetic, and you're at your best to procreate. However, not everyone finds younger more attractive. Many people are attracted to partners who are older and have more life experience. You might think that this is purely due to mommy or daddy issues or ulterior motives, but there are many more intriguing reasons why people feel more attracted to older than younger, and these differences can differ depending on which sex you're attracted to. So let's talk about dating older or younger and what the reasons are behind it and how it differs cross-culturally. Age differences, or age disparity as it's often referred to in romantic relationships, has evolved over centuries and is very culturally dependent. Societies around the world have varying views about age differences within dating and relationships, and evaluating if it is socially acceptable or not should always be viewed through a social cultural lens. However, the prevalence of age disparate relationships in certain communities or environments don't only depend on social norms or sexual preferences, but also on mate availability, mating strategies, and also gender roles. Think about it. In recent years, women are choosing to pursue a professional career or to postpone marriage or having kids till later in life. Also, the belief that men are the sole provider in the family is also steadily changing, especially in Western societies, allowing for more women to take on the role of being a provider within the family, or maybe even to date more assertively. Now, of course, there are other factors that we don't often think about when we relate that more to dating and why people date more older, or maybe even younger. And these could be factors such as economic factors, like job availability, or the uncertainty of the markets and things. So let's dive into what is kind of the average age difference, or the age gap between couples in general. And now if we dive into the literature, we'll see that what the literature, especially the relationship literature, says that the age difference, the common age difference amongst couples is anywhere between 1 to 3 years. So 1 to 3 years seems to be a commonality across cultures. So not just in the West, but also in other countries around the world, that average age difference seems to work best when it comes to relationship satisfaction and also to relationship longevity. The relationship literature on age disparity and relationship success and longevity is very inconsistent. So though the literature says in general that 1 to 3 years age gap is the best in terms of relationship success, there's other literature that actually shows that larger age differences actually also work very, very well, and sometimes even better. Some research shows that couples in long-term relationships where the age gap is larger than 5 years, that they also experience having higher relationship satisfaction especially during the early stages of their union. And older men and women who have a relationship with younger partners seem to be happier than when they have a partner their own age. So it's interesting, right? So there's differences in perspective of age comparison and success in relationships. Some literature shows very different results than other literature, and I don't think it's only depending on looking at combined factors in science, but we also need to look at what are the differences, what makes this success, right? Numbers are just numbers, but we have to dive deeper into kind of the psychology of understanding why people want to date someone out of their own age category, but also what are the factors that actually make you more compatible and therefore also more successful. Also, what the literature also says and research says in general, and what I've also seen when I engage with a lot of my clients, is that age differences can work very, very well, but there's also a lot of drama related to couples that are, that have a very big age gap between themselves. So let me first share with you some interesting statistics on how many couples have actually a much more bigger age difference. So let's say 10 years or more between themselves. So in Western societies, about 8% of heterosexual relationships have a large age gap. Again, large age gap being defined as 10 years or more. For same-sex couples, the percentage of large age gap relationships vary between about 15% for women-to-women relationships and about 25% for men-to-men relationships. So looking at these numbers and seeing that, in certain couples and certain relationships that, age disparity is more accepted and also more prevalent, actually also shows that there's also success to be found in that. And then the question is, what are those factors that lead to successful relationships where there's a younger and older person in that relationship? Before we dive into that, I actually want to kind of also look at the gloomy side, as I promised to talk about as well. What are some of the kind of less positive sides about being in a relationship with someone who's older, much older than you, or someone who's younger than you? Right, so I think it's also good to kind of dive into this darker side of things because there is also a lot of drama in these kinds of relationships as well. So age-disparate relationships compared to, let's say, similar age relationships experience, according to some research, more negative relationship outcomes, such as, for example, a faster decline of marital satisfaction over time, especially as the age gap widens between partners. An increased likelihood of also getting divorced. And also, according to a Korean study, a higher occurrence of mental health issues such as depression is more prevalent in what they found in terms of age-desperate relationships. So again, there are positive sides to this, and again, there are also negative sides to this. But once we address the negative sides and understand where the potential barriers are or the difficulties are, then we can find ways to overcome them and therefore also make these larger age gap relationships more successful. And I guess that's my objective in today's discussion, to kind of look at what works and what do we perceive as compatible and what is really compatibility, right? What is age compatibility? Because once we understand what that is, we can find, we can come up with strategies and we can come up with approaches that can actually help us to become more successful in relationships when our partner is older than ourselves. So before we talk about age compatibility, I just want to share one of the stories that one of my followers shared with me when I asked them. I said, could you share some of your stories with me about, do you date older? Do you date younger? Why do you date? Has that changed over time? And one of my followers who's 42 years old and who wants to remain anonymous says she initially dated younger and she liked the thrill of dating someone younger than her age. It was fun and exciting. But eventually, she said that I wanted to find someone who was much more older and more mature and actually ready to be in a more sustainable relationship over time. And so that's why eventually her taste started to change. She says she looks younger for her than her age, and that's why it made it also easier for her to kind of date younger. But around 34 and 35 years old, she decided that she wanted something more stable, and she wanted someone who had also done a lot of inner work as well. And that was very important for her. And now her age preference has gone up to about looking for a man, for someone who's 5 or 6 or 7 years older than herself, and that's what she finds more attractive, and also what she believes is something that is more stable. And I think that's an interesting point, right? So we date younger and older for different reasons. If you're an older woman or older man, dating younger can be a great experience, right? And in that case, it could give you an ego boost in that perspective, saying, "Hey, I've still got it. I still look good. People still find me attractive," and that can do great for your self-esteem. But it could also mean that maybe it's kind of you being the older person, the more mature person, and maybe because you're now older, you have more experience in your life, and that you feel that you'd like to pass on that experience. And being with someone younger and who's open to learn from you, or maybe even in that perspective, also wanting to have more life experience in that relationship, being added to the mix of things, therefore could also be very interested in you. And also, if we look at some of the data, especially like dating apps, they bring out a lot of interesting facts about relationships, and because they look at the data and find who couples, who sends messages to who and who opens which messages. They actually find that when women in their late 30s and 40s, when they're trying to match with someone on Tinder or another app, that it's more often that younger men in this case actually will respond or actually seek out women who are older or more mature. And that's very interesting, because it also shows that younger men also find older women interesting because of their maturity, because of their successes in life, or because maybe they feel that they bring less drama to the table, and they would like to be with someone who can also help them to mature more effectively than maybe someone that at their kind of their age could. So there's multiple reasons why you can find, if you're an older woman or an older man, why you could find someone younger attractive, not just for the energy and the excitement that they bring to the table, but also because, you can maybe also, as let's say an older woman, maybe we can change those kind of traditional norms around. Maybe you can then eventually be more the provider, or take charge, or make decisions in that kind of relationship, or in the dating aspect, which could maybe change the way you had dated in the past. So I think it brings along not only the kind of intimate benefits, but also maybe some of the behavioral benefits that it also brings to the table as well. Before we listen to some more stories and reflect on more of the voices from my followers, I actually want to talk more about age compatibility right now. So, I think age compatibility is a very complex thing, because when we think about, what is compatible, we might wonder, well, we would just think of someone's chronological age, and that would be how we would want to compare ourselves to other people. But what's very interesting is that we spend most of our time with people our same age, regardless if we're 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, or 70 years old. Most of the people that we engage with in a social setting, either at work or friends or at school, are most of the times people of our own age. And so therefore, the more time we spend with people, the more time we would find similarities with them, the more experiences we would also share with them, and therefore also more likely for you to build an attraction for someone of your own age. And henceforth, one of the major reasons why people actually fall in love or actually have a relationship with someone their own age. But that doesn't, of course, explain the reasons why you could fall for someone outside of your age category, or someone who's not close to your social group. So age compatibility in terms of chronological age, I don't think is a great way of thinking about comparisons. Other ways we can compare people or partners with is also on the basis of physical age. So think about muscle tone and skin firmness and mobility. If you're fit, and you generally are fit when you're older, or when you've reached a certain age in life, and you're still as active as you were maybe in your 20s, or even fitter than you were than when you were in your 20s, you could have an age or a fitness, like a physical age, that fits more with someone who is younger than you. And therefore, you might feel a better compatibility with someone younger, someone your own age, because maybe someone at your own age is not as fit as someone maybe younger would be. Again, as a generalization, but think about it. Maybe as we get older, we focus less on our bodies and less on our health, though the trend is actually showing that we're doing that more. But it's harder maybe to find a partner who is equally fit or even more fit or even fitter than you are. And so that's also another way of looking at compatibility across ages. So physical age. Emotional age or a psychological age could also be another way of looking at compatibility. So think about someone's emotional stability or sense of humor or agreeableness, even someone's intelligence or their maturity. You could be someone at 23 years old and feel that you're more mature than someone else at your own age, and therefore also feel more attracted to someone who is in their 30s, 40s, or maybe even their 50s. And so that emotional and psychological age compatibility is also something to take into consideration. Though we know that that's the thing that we like, but we're not as conscious of it. And by being more conscious of these different types of compatibilities and age compatibilities, we can therefore be more selective or be more conscious of why we like someone or where we actually see the fit with that other person besides just the age itself. And the last one, the last kind of age compatibility that I would like to bring to the table here is sexual age. So your sexual stamina, your desire, your sexual openness, or fertility. And those are other aspects that we could also consider why we see a compatibility across different age categories and therefore also choose to be with someone else. You could still be very much in your 50s and still extremely sexually active, being either a woman or a man in that case, and therefore you might want to be with someone who has an equal stamina as you do, and therefore being with someone younger could also be another reason why you choose to date outside of your own age category. What are some of the psychological reasons why why people actually like to date older? Well, generally, younger men and women who choose an older partner, regardless of sexual orientation, are driven by a need for safety and security, which can be emotional, physical, or financial. Now, these psychological needs are not just socially driven, but they're also evolutionary driven. So thinking about, having a partner who is able to show his or her abilities to provide that security and safety at an older age is going to be something that a lot of partners who are seeking that in their partner would choose for. So they'd rather choose for an older partner because they have this ability to not only show in the short term, but also in the long term that they can provide that safety and security over time. Biologically, a woman's fertility decreases with age, and from a reproduction perspective, can't explain a younger male's choice for an older woman. However, there is a different evolutionary reason which can explain why younger men are attracted to older women. And it comes back to what I said before. The reason is that older women allow younger men to grow in a more rounded way than maybe younger women can. So in that perspective, in terms of your own personal development and growth, younger men could choose to be with an older man. And again, it goes both ways, right? In same-sex couples as well, choosing an older woman or an older man could also be for those similar reasons. Now, I guess a lot of you, while we've been listening to the psychological reasons and the evolutionary perspectives and the cultural perspectives to why we like to date younger or older, a lot of you are probably saying, well, okay, Dr. Fennick, thank you for this is great, but I still think that I have got a lot of mommy and daddy issues. And I want to get to that. I actually want to address that point because that, also on social media, I see a lot of people saying, wait a minute, I just have mommy issues, I just have daddy issues. So to help you kind of distinguish if you have mommy or daddy issues, or if there are the other reasons that I talked about today, why you like someone older, I think I need to start with giving you a definition of what mommy and daddy issues are. And I think after you've listened to this definition of what they are, then you can kind of decide if you actually have them. Because some of you do. Okay, so let's kind of jump into that. So being attracted to older can also be due to mommy or daddy issues, which is a common catchphrase referring to psychological issues caused by a problematic parent-child relationship. So just think about neglect or absence in your childhood with a caregiver, which then manifests itself in partner attraction later in life. And mommy and daddy issues often result in complex or dysfunctional relationships with older romantic partners because of how one's childhood was and how that has developed. And then, of course, how that's impacted their attraction and choices later in life. So I think this is a clear way of looking at, mommy and daddy issues, or really calling it that, and how it really differs from why people could choose being with an older partner, right? For the other reasons that I mentioned today. So keep that in mind when you think about your partner choices and why you find, that guy with that gray beard and, George Clooney look more attractive, or that beautiful mommy who is older and you just kind of like, I love that maturity in her. Why you actually like that person. It doesn't only have to be mommy and daddy issues, but this is one of the ways of how we can define that and find that out for ourselves. Before we jump into, the challenges of dating younger and older, and how maybe, dating across age categories can be perceived very differently between genders, let's talk about some of the challenges when we want to date, or if we're younger and we want to date older. What are some of the challenges? Or when we're older, when we want to date younger, what are some of those challenges that we can experience? Now, the most challenges within age-disparate relationships fall within a couple of categories. Now, these problems often center around misalignment of life goals, that what I mentioned before. So, for example, wanting to have kids later in life, or, just your aspirations around your career, or just kind of chilling out and taking life as is. That, of course, those misalignment around those goals can also have a huge impact on what you care about and how you engage with each other, or how you spend time with each other, or maybe what you would want to get out of that relationship. It could also be a misalignment, in terms of experiences. Being older, you look at life very differently and with a different lens than when you did when you were maybe 20 or maybe even 30. And so those experiences and the differences of perspective that come with that can also be challenging, especially when you have difficult times or difficult conversations, or you're in conflict with each other, because you might view those conflicts also very differently as well. And also the level of maturity. You can be very much attracted to someone older or younger, but if the maturity level is very different, that can be extremely challenging when you want to work on things, or you deal with barriers. Also, the misalignment in the level of maturity between people can also be very challenging, especially again when you're dealing with difficult situations, or how you deal with life in itself, or how you look at life. But again, that misalignment can be an opportunity for you to grow together and learn from each other, which that can be that growth opportunity that both partners can have with each other. Also, for an older partner to be with a younger partner, they can also learn about how their partner looks at life, which can be very enriching. But again, as an older partner, you have to be open for that. And one of the challenges for the younger person in that relationship can be that maybe the older partner feels that they are too experienced and they don't want to open up for themselves. So again, maturity aspects are not just you're younger, you're immature. No, maybe you're too, you're older and therefore you're too rigid. The issue around maturity goes to both sides within age-desperate relationships. Issues center around health, energy levels, and sexual desire. And as I mentioned before, someone being with someone who's older might not be as fit as you, might not have that energy to kind of go on long trips, or go out clubbing with you, or to bars every weekend, if that's something you like. Vice versa, you might want to kind of spend more quality time at home with your partner, and whereas your partner wants to be more outside. And so that's where I see personally where there's a lot of issues between people, especially between couples, that where the age difference is pretty large. And of course, sexual desire. And don't get me wrong, right? You'd often think a younger partner would want to have sex more regularly or be more intimate, and the older partner kind of is a bit tired. That's kind of the stereotype, but I actually see it going the other way around, especially in today's world, where people are so much more preoccupied with their lives and the uncertainty of today's world, that in many couples where the age gap is big, is that the older partner actually has the higher sexual stamina, and the younger partner, doesn't feel like it as much. And so that's also another challenge that needs to be considered as well. And that final kind of group or final kind of category of problems that I often see happen a lot is around stigma and disapproval, and how people might respond to you when you are dating someone older or younger, and how sensitive you are to that. I think that's a major problem that often doesn't is not often thought of or is really discussed as much, but it is very much a big problem because you might get, kind of side eyes looking at you and saying, well, what are the ulterior motives here that you're dating someone older than yourself? Are you really in love with that person? Of course that can happen. And, people sometimes date people older because they have ulterior motives, but that's not always the case. And how do you deal with those social pressures and how people might judge you from that perspective? And what the research also shows is that your inability to deal with that effectively, or your sensitivity to that, actually doesn't do well to your relationship success. Maybe one more point that I want to talk about is misbehaviors. And misbehaviors in the sense of when you're older, you naturally think, well, hey, that person's older, they must be naturally more mature. Well, I'll tell you that's not the case, right? That's definitely not the case. Being older doesn't always mean that you're more mature. And so, that can be a surprise to the younger partner, especially if you're feeling attracted to an older person. And then it turns out that the older partner is more a kid than you are. But misbehaviors are not just in terms of maturity. They could also be in terms of why maybe an older man or woman would want to date you, or if you're younger. And that could also be because of a power imbalance. They just feel that, I don't want to date someone my age or older because I don't feel comfortable, or, I just don't feel secure enough around people those age, my own age. So therefore, let me date someone younger because I can tell them what to do. I can control them more. So that's something, that can happen a lot. And I see happen a lot between couples who have a large age gap. And I think one very, very interesting point, just to kind of close up on this topic of challenges around dating someone younger or older. And this is something that I have come to learn over the many conversations that I've had with people, is that what does the word relationship mean to someone who is 40 and someone who's 20? Because the difference in definition can mean something completely different, or the expectations they have around what a relationship means. So when you ask someone who's in their 40s or 50s, what does a relationship mean to you? Well, someone at that age could say, well, I want to look for a partner and be with someone that I can maybe spend the rest of my life with, or I'm looking for someone that I can be with more long-term and have a deeper connection with. So for someone older, the word relationship can actually mean something more deeper, more long-term. But when you ask someone younger, so let's say in their early 20s, what does a relationship mean for you? They might not give that same significance or even definition or meaning to that word. In some cases, having a relationship means, well, I need to survive. I need to ensure that I can grow and learn and move on, not wanting to be with that partner for a long term, right? Life is fleeting. So let me just be with as many people as possible just to kind of advance myself by learning and growing and securing my life in that perspective. And that could also be another difference in perspective. So when someone at 20, 22 and someone at 45 or 46, they say, I want to have a relationship with you. The problem is that they both want to have a relationship, but not for the same reasons, and maybe for the same definition that they've given to that. So if you are dating someone younger or older, maybe one of the first things that you want to say to each other when you say, well, let's consider embarking on a relationship, start maybe by asking, how do you define what a relationship is? I think that's a critical starting point to ensure that you understand each other's perspectives and the expectations around what you want to get out of that relationship. So before we kind of jump into the red flags and green flags, I also want to reflect on maybe some of the unfairness of age disparity acceptance across genders. Now, one thing that we see is that across cultures, older men receive less scrutiny if they choose to have a younger partner. In many societies, people herald an older man for having someone younger, or even multiple partners, having that sexual prowess being a sign of tolerated, machismo, for example, in the Hispanic culture. However, for women, on the other hand, the story is very different. Older women interested in younger men are often labeled as cougars, made to believe that their sexual motives or their motives for younger men are more sinister than that of their male counterparts in a similar age group. And just think about how this perception is reinforced on TV and popular TV series and movies. Think of Stifler's mom from the movie American Pie, or Samantha Jones from Sex and the City, right? It's not given the same kind of respect, it's perceived in a very, very different way. And so not only the perception, but also in many cultures, women above a certain age category or a certain age in itself who are still single or are divorced are looked at differently than men are. And the issue around this is that it keeps gender stereotypes in place. So let's talk about red flags and green flags when you're dating older or someone younger. So one of the first red flags that I think you should look out for is if you're dating someone older, are you dating them for true love reasons or ulterior motives? And again, that happens. And so for an older partner who is actually looking for something more stable and sincere and looking for that emotional connection and something more long-term, paying attention to someone's motives is really important. And that also goes for dating someone your own age, but also dating younger, that's something you need to consider. So another red flag that you should definitely watch out for, especially if and I'm talking to yourself, right? So this is a red flag that you might want to reflect on. If you're younger and dating someone older, why are you dating them? Are you dating them more because you want to have that compatibility? Or is it maybe because of your mommy and daddy issues? Like a lot of people, have mentioned, of course, on social media. And if the reasons are because of your mommy and daddy issues, understand the complications and the challenges and the possible dysfunction that might come out of that in your relationship with a partner. And if you can be honest to yourself about that and reflect on that, then that gives you the opportunity to discuss that with your older partner and to maybe go into therapy or to get someone to support you with maybe some of the issues that you have, or when you date someone older, what kind of how does it trigger you emotionally, and how would you maybe react in not such a great way when being with them. So being attracted to older is one thing, but what does it do to you internally and what are you trying to get out of it is another thing. And if you can discuss that with your partner, then I think you're well off to a great start. But be conscious of your own red flag in this case. I think another kind of red flag to look for is compatibility. And if you don't see the compatibility in terms of goals and life experiences, and especially wanting to have kids can also be a really, really big life goal that maybe the younger partner has and the older doesn't, or maybe even the older has and the younger doesn't, that could be a big challenge and barrier in that relationship. And I guess the final red flag that I want to share with you is, choosing, and this again, the red flag for an older partner is that if you choose a partner because you believe that you can manipulate them more easily than someone your old age, then that's definitely a big red flag. And for a younger partner, getting into a relationship, looking for that someone who's more secure and gives them that sense of safety, watch out for that. That's something you really, really need to watch out for, because unfortunately, not all older men and women have always the best intentions for dating younger. So those are some red flags. And finally, what are some green flags that you should definitely look out for in terms of, when you want to date someone out of your age category? Choosing someone for the longer term, kind of the counter to the red flag that I mentioned before, and also that long-term compatibility. So think of age compatibility in terms of physical age, emotional age, psychological age, and finally also sexual age, extremely important. The second green flag that I want to share with you, if you and your partner are indifferent about what other people think about your age difference, and you don't allow external pressures to negatively affect your relationship, then I think that's a great green flag. That's also a good indicator of potential relationship success, especially when you date different age categories. So being aware of how sensitive you are to what other people think about you, also really important factor to look at. And if you are indifferent about it, then definitely that is a good indicator. And the final green flag that I think is really important, and this is a green flag across many of the other dating issues or relationship issues that exist. Communication, being able to communicate effectively with each other is extremely important. And so being able to communicate your needs, your desires, your dislikes, and finding ways to overcome those difficulties through communicating effectively with each other, I think is an important thing to look at. So that's it for today. I hope that you've enjoyed today's session and learning more about the reasons why people date across different ages, the psychological reasons, the biological reasons, the cultural reasons, but also understood that there are a lot of benefits and not only challenges when you want to date someone outside of your own age category. And those challenges that we have addressed today, that if you tackle them head on, you'll be in a much more better place to actually make that relationship with that daddy or mommy or someone older than you or younger than you more successful. So thanks for tuning in today. And if you're not following me yet, you can follow me on Instagram and on TikTok under the handle Modern.Day.Psychologist. Please also remember, if you want to share your stories or have questions, if you'd like to have aired in my upcoming podcast, then please do send me a DM or a voice note, and I will definitely consider them for our next shows. Thank you again.
Are you ready?